So today I want to take a look at the Azad Kashmir, and I really want to see how Azad it really is. So let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Sham Sharma Show Global. It's the Sham Sharma Show, but in English. So for ages, the entire discourse around the state of Jammu and Kashmir has been focused on the Indian state and what the Indian state has been doing in Jammu and Kashmir. And more recently, the discourse has been focused around what the Indian state has done by revoking Article 370 and the negative effects this is going to have on Kashmiri culture as a result of the decriminalization of homosexuality, as a result of men and women getting equal rights, as a result of Dalits and Sunni Muslims getting equal rights. I mean, honestly, how can Modi offend Kashmiri culture like this? And this is not what I'm saying. This is according to one of the great heroes of the Kashmiri separatist movement, Assia Andrabi. Assia Andrabi believes that according to her, Kashmir is Pakistan and her goal is to further Islamize Pakistan. And her goal for the Kashmiri women is to make them more Islamic. Wait, is this actually her? Oh no, wait, sorry. This is Assia Andrabi. Wait. It's one of them, I promise. It's one of them. So obviously all the focus has been on the terrible things that India has done in the Kashmir that it administers. But I think what will shock you is to know that there is actually another part of Jammu and Kashmir that is occupied by Pakistan. What the fuck? I know, I was as shocked as you were. And generally, Indian and international media doesn't want to focus on this part of Jammu and Kashmir because, you know,
Islamophobia.
And obviously, you might think that because international and Indian media doesn't really cover this part of Kashmir, that it must be in a much better position than Indian administered Kashmir. So today, let's take a look at this unexplored, unknown Kashmir and try to find out how Azad it really is. So they call it Azad Kashmir. It's not really Azad Kashmir. It's just like in People's Republic of China, the people don't really have any rights and the people don't really have any say. So this Azad Kashmir is supposed to be this sovereign territory that has its own constitution, that has its own elected government. But in reality, the Pakistani government, the Pakistani army and the Pakistani ISI controls all aspects of political life in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. In fact, within the constitution of this Azad Kashmir under section 56, the Pakistani government can dissolve any elected government in Pakistan occupied Kashmir at any time, no matter how much support that elected government enjoys in the Legislative Assembly. This constitution also provides for two executive forums which govern Pakistan occupied Kashmir. One of them is the Azad Kashmir government in Muzaffarabad and the other one is the Azad Kashmir Council in Islamabad. The Azad Kashmir Council in Islamabad has all the final powers when it comes to Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and the Azad Kashmir government in Muzaffarabad cannot override any of the decisions taken by the Azad Kashmir Council. And this Azad Kashmir Council is under the complete numerical control of the Pakistani government in Islamabad. And this also explains the arbitrary and repeated changes in POK's leadership according to the whims and fancies of the Pakistani government. POK leaders have been arbitrarily removed under the leadership of Ayub Khan, under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, under Ziaul Haq, under Pervez Musharraf, and under Nawaz Sharif as well. To give you an idea of this, in 2006, about 62 pro-independence candidates had filed nominations for the POK elections. All of these were barred from the contest by election authorities, and the Pakistan-backed party swept the elections completely. So basically, for the people of POK, it's absolutely of no use in participating in the electoral process at all. Also, the Pakistani government maintains control through all key administrative offices in POK which are manned by Pakistani officials. These include the Office of the Chief Secretary, the Inspector General of Police, the Accountant General, and the Finance Secretary. Oh, I get it. Azad is used sarcastically. And the political situation is POK summed up by Sardar Karamdad Khan, a Muzaffarabad-based lawyer who said the Pakistani bureaucracy is the real administrative power, the ISI and the Pakistani army exercise coercive power, and under the constitution, the elected representatives are subservient to the Kashmir Council controlled by Pakistan. Now let's compare that to the provisions of Article 370 that were in place until recently and how the Indian administered Kashmir functioned as a result of Article 370. So Article 370 370 exempted the state from the complete applicability of the Constitution of India. The state was conferred with powers to have its own constitution. Central legislative powers over the state were limited to only 3 subjects of defense, foreign affairs and communications. Other constitutional powers of the central government could be extended to the state only with the concurrence of the state government. This concurrence was only provisional. It had to be ratified by the state's constituent assembly. India literally had a system of one nation, 2 constitutions. Jammu and Kashmir routinely got more funding than the state of Uttar Pradesh, which is India's most populous state, despite Jammu and Kashmir having only 1% of the country's population. In Kashmir until recently, separatist organizations like the Hurriyat Conference were roaming freely, grifting off of state funding. And parties like National Conference and PDP were freely conducting elections and thriving. So let's be real. The Indian side was the real Azad Kashmir. Another aspect that is not discussed in the media at all is how the Pakistani army actually uses terror proxies to control Pakistani occupied Kashmir. According to Human Rights Watch, since 1994, when the ISI organized 13 militant groups operating in Jammu and Kashmir into the Muttahida Jihad Council or the United Jihad Council. These are army-backed militant organizations that have shared with the Pakistani military through the ISI real decision-making authority and management in the Kashmir struggle. These include terrorist organizations like Lashkar-e-Taiba, like Harkatul Mujahideen, like Hizbul Mujahideen, and like Al-Badr. So think about it. Terror organizations literally run Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Yeah, nothing really says Azad like terrorist organizations running your entire country. Virtually all independent commentators, political figures, and journalists that were interviewed by Human Rights Watch said that there is constant infiltration from Pakistani-occupied Kashmir into Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir of terrorists, but nobody wants to speak about it because they're all afraid of the ISI. One of POK's most important resources is water, but even that resource is not allowed to be kept in POK. That resource is taken by the Pakistani government and distributed all over Pakistan. Chaudhry Arif, who is the convener of the Mangla Dam Action Committee, a protest group formed to demand better compensation for those affected by the Mangla Dam, said, "All of Pakistan uses our water. In the process, there remain acute water shortages in Mirpur, from where we can see the dam feeding the palatial homes of Islamabad." Then let's talk about the demography and how the Pakistani government has actually enacted demographic changes in POK and in Gilgit-Baltistan. So after 1970, there has been a concerted attempt in Gilgit-Baltistan by the Pakistani government to completely change their demographic setup. According to an Indian Defense Review report, between a 20-year period from 1998 to 2017, Shias and Ismailis, who once comprised 85% of the population of Gilgit-Baltistan, are now down to about 46%. POK and Gilgit-Baltistan has been inundated with Punjabi-speaking Pakistanis in an effort to completely destroy any native culture that these two areas have. So on the one hand, it's beautiful to see POK and Gilgit-Baltistan being enriched by Pakistani Punjabi culture, but on the other hand, compare that to India. Compare that to India, where instead of the Indian state actually changing the demographics of the region, Pakistani-backed terrorist organizations in cahoots with many Kashmiri people conspired to murder and throw out 400,000 Hindus from Kashmir in order to make Kashmir a Islamic ethno-state. There were chants of Nizam-e-Mustafa. There were chants of Pakistan se rishta kya, la ilaha illallah. It almost sounds like the media has been focusing on the wrong Kashmir. And finally, let's talk about freedom of expression as well. No person in POK can be appointed to any government job, including the judiciary, until and unless he or she expresses complete and utter loyalty to the idea of the accession of POK to Pakistan. The Pakistani government has long hindered the spread of free information in POK. Most of the newspapers that are read in POK are not Kashmiri newspapers, they are Pakistani newspapers. The Daily K2, the leading newspaper of the region, has always carried on its masthead the phrase Sarzameen Be-Ain Ki Awaaz, or the voice of the constitutionless land, which completely sums up the situation of these people who weren't even considered, by the way, when Pakistani government decided to give away 5,000 acres of their land to the Chinese government without their permission. And in order to publish within the POK territory, newspapers and periodicals need to be granted permission by the Kashmir Council and the Ministry of Kashmir Affairs in Islamabad. And so any news pertaining to Kashmiri nationalism, Kashmiri freedom, or criticism of the Pakistani establishment is completely and utterly suppressed. And in fact, even the 29,000 refugees that left Indian administered Kashmir to go to POK in 1989 to 91 in search of a better life have found that life on this side of the border is actually a lot worse, because a lot of them have been Kashmir nationalists, and because of that they've been targeted by the Pakistani army. Because of that there have been abductions and torture and random killings by the Pakistani army of these immigrants as well. So yeah, India's handling of Kashmir has not been the best in the past. India has sometimes handled the Kashmir issue with a very limp hand, and on the other hand, sometimes the army has taken certain excesses with the people of Kashmir. But comparing Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir to Pakistani-occupied Kashmir is basically comparing apples to oranges. The fact that POK is run by Islamic terror organizations isn't even really mentioned or covered by any mainstream organizations, whether in India or abroad. And honestly, that tells you everything you need to know about why people hate mainstream media so much these days. So you tell me, based on the evidence, based on what we know about Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which of the two Kashmirs should the media be focusing more on? Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. Once again, guys, if you liked today's episode, make sure to leave a like, leave a thumbs up. It helps me out. It helps this channel out a great deal as well. If you like the Sham Sharma Show Global, if you like what we do here, and if you'd like to see the channel succeed and grow bigger, please make sure to support the show on Patreon by clicking the link in the description down below. Also, if you liked today's episode, if you like what we do here on the Sham Sharma Show Global, and if you'd like to support the Sham Sharma Show in the future as well, and you still haven't subscribed, man, come on. The button's right here. Just click it, just subscribe it, and just click the bell icon to get notified in the future as well. Check out our other episodes that are over here as well. I'm sure you will like them, all right? I will see you for the next episode, and until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys soon.